"Get your hands off him, you peasant!" The anguished shriek shattered the sacred silence of the grand Mediterranean cathedral. A wedding that had taken 2 years and millions of dollars to orchestrate dissolved into chaos no one could have predicted. 500 of the most dangerous people in the underworld turned as one. Rival dons who had declared temporary truces for this union. Politicians with blood on their hands. International arms dealers in custom Armani. All of them went rigid at the impossible scene unfolding before the altar. A waitress, burgundy uniform stained with grease and coffee, dark wavy hair tumbling loose from its bun, had her small hand clamped around Benito Coxeye's tattooed wrist. She was dragging the most feared man in the city backward down the aisle, away from his own bride, with a strength that defied her petite frame. Elena Volkov, the statuesque bride wrapped in 50,000 euros worth of white silk and Belgian lace, stood frozen. Then her porcelain face went from shock white to fury red. Her accented voice cut through the cathedral like a blade. "Security! Seize that insane woman immediately!" Enforcers materialized from every corner. Black suits, dead eyes, hands reaching for concealed weapons. These were men who had buried bodies for the Coxeye family, prepared to eliminate anyone foolish enough to disrespect their boss on his wedding day. But Amber Costa didn't release her grip. Her fingers tightened on Benito's wrist, short nails pressing into the rose tattoo beneath his cuff. Her dark brown eyes were wet with unshed tears, but they burned with a desperation that had crossed beyond fear. "Benito, if you drink that wine, you won't live to see sunset. Please, just 60 seconds. I'm begging you." Benito Coxeye, a man of 38 whose dark Mediterranean eyes had watched people die without flinching, stared down at the waitress he had banished in disgrace just yesterday. A thief, or so he'd been told. And yet here she was, crashing the union between the Coxeye and Volkov empires in front of 500 witnesses who would spread this humiliation across every criminal network in Europe. She had just signed her own death warrant. Before we go deeper into this story, drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. This one is going to break your heart and set your soul on fire. Hit that subscribe button because you do not want to miss what happens next. The enforcers closed in, polished shoes clicking against ancient stone. One word from Benito, and this girl with her worn apron would vanish. Her body would never be found. Her younger sister would spend the rest of her life wondering what happened. Amber felt the first enforcer's shadow fall over her. She could smell his cologne mixed with the metallic scent of the gun under his jacket. This was it. She had thrown everything away on a desperate gamble. Her safety, her sister's future, her life. All for a man who had looked her in the eye yesterday and called her a criminal. But she couldn't let him drink that wine. Not when she knew what Elena had planned. Not when she had the proof burning in her pocket. Her voice came out stronger than she felt. "I know you have no reason to trust me. I know what you think I am. But if you ever cared about truth, give me 1 minute. That's all I ask." And yet, there was something in her face. Not madness, not revenge, but genuine terror, not for herself, but for him. Benito had seen every kind of deception in his years ruling the city's shadows. He could read lies in a person's eyes like others read newspapers. And what he saw in Amber Costa's tear-bright gaze wasn't cunning or manipulation. It was truth, raw and desperate and terrifying. Before the first enforcer's hand could close on her shoulder, Benito raised his free hand. The gesture froze every man in place. 500 people drew breath at the same moment. Even Elena went still at the altar, fury barely controlled behind her eyes. Vestry, now. He let Ambra pull him toward the stone archway that led to the priest's private chamber. Their footsteps echoed against marble as they crossed into the shadowed corridor. The heavy oak door loomed before them, carved with saints and sinners. Amber pushed it open and pulled him inside. The vestry was small, cool, smelling of incense and old wood. Priests' robes hung along one wall. A single stained glass window cast colored light across the stone floor. The door slammed shut behind them with a boom that echoed through the cathedral. Outside, 500 of the world's most powerful criminals held their collective breath. Elena stood alone at the altar, her hand pressed to her throat, platinum waves trembling. She wanted to storm that door, to scream, to demand entrance. But the look Benito had given her just before he disappeared made ice form in her veins. 1 minute crawled by. Then 2. Then 5. The silence grew suffocating. Then the whispers began, spreading like poison through the pews. What's happening in there? Who is that girl? What could she possibly have that would make Benito Coxeye walk away from his own vows? No one in that ancient cathedral knew that behind those oak panels, an empire built on blood and fear was about to crumble. That in those few stolen minutes, a recording no longer than a confession would rewrite the fate of everyone in that room. Inside the vestry, Amber finally released Benito's wrist. Her hand shook as she reached into the pocket of her stained uniform. Her phone felt impossibly heavy as she pulled it out. This was it. This was the moment that would either vindicate her or ensure her death. Benito stood with his back against the door, arms crossed, face unreadable. The feared boss, the man who held the city in his palm. Right now, he was looking at her like she was either the bravest person he'd ever met or the most foolish. You have 1 minute, Amber Costa. Make it count. Amber's fingers trembled as she opened the audio file on her phone. But before the first word could emerge from the tiny speaker, Benito held up his hand. Wait. Before I hear whatever you've brought me, I need to know something. Why? Why risk your life to warn a man who threw you out like garbage? The question hung between them in the incense-thick air. Amber lowered her phone, her throat tight. How could she explain it to him when she barely understood it herself? How could she tell him that despite everything, despite the humiliation and the accusations and the coldness in his eyes when he dismissed her, she couldn't let him die? Because 6 months ago you saw me. The words came out barely above a whisper. And just like that, she was back there. Back to the day everything changed. 6 months earlier. The service entrance to the Coxeye Villa smelled like lemon polish and fear. Amber Costa stood in line with 15 other applicants, all of them desperate for work, all of them trying not to stare at the armed guard stationed at every corner of the marble-floored reception area. She clutched her worn leather portfolio against her chest, feeling the weight of her sister Sophia's medical bills inside. Leukemia didn't care that you were only 19. It didn't care that your parents were dead, and your older sister was all you had left. It just kept demanding treatments you couldn't afford and time you didn't have. The Coxeye family paid 3 times what any restaurant in the city offered. Everyone knew they were criminals. Everyone knew working for them meant turning a blind eye to things decent people shouldn't ignore. But Sophia needed chemotherapy, and decency didn't pay hospital bills. A sharp-faced woman in a tailored black suit called them one by one into an interview room. The lucky ones came out with employment packets. Most came out with their heads down and their dreams crushed. When Amber's turn came, her palms were slick with sweat. The interview lasted exactly 4 minutes. The woman barely glanced at her references, her culinary school certificate, the recommendation letter from her previous employer. Instead, she asked strange questions. Did Amber have family in law enforcement? Had she ever been arrested? Did she understand that discretion was the most important quality in Coxeye household staff? Amber answered honestly. No police family. No criminal record. And yes, she understood that what happened in the villa stayed in the villa. The woman's expression never changed, cold and assessing as a security camera. You're too educated for serving staff. Why aren't you working at a 5-star restaurant? Amber could have lied, could have made up something professional and acceptable. But the truth came out before she could stop it. My sister is sick. I need money fast, and I need a schedule flexible enough to take her to treatments. 5-star restaurants want your soul for 60 hours a week. You're offering double the pay and consistent shifts. I'll work hard, keep my mouth shut, and never ask questions. That's what you need, isn't it? For the first time, the woman's expression shifted. Something that might have been approval flickered across her face. She stood, dismissed Amber with a curt nod, and said she'd hear back within 24 hours. Amber walked back through the service entrance with her head down, certain she'd failed. Too honest. Too desperate. They wanted servants who would blend into the wallpaper, not women with 6 sisters and obvious motivations. She was halfway across the courtyard when she heard it. A voice, deep and commanding, with an accent that turned Italian into music. Wait. Amber froze. Slowly she turned. Benito Coxeye stood in the arched doorway of the main villa, backlit by golden afternoon sun. He wore a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms covered in intricate tattoos. A rose. A compass. Words in Latin she couldn't read from this distance. His dark hair was slightly disheveled, as if he'd been running his hands through it. And his eyes, those dark Mediterranean eyes that would later watch her get dragged away in disgrace, were fixed on her with an intensity that made her breath catch. He descended the stone steps with the casual grace of a man who'd never questioned his right to command any space he entered. The guard straightened. The gardeners working nearby suddenly found their pruning shears fascinating. Even the afternoon breeze seemed to hold its breath. He stopped 3 feet away from her. Up close, Amber could see the scar that cut through his left eyebrow, the shadow of stubble along his jaw, the way his shirt collar was open just enough to reveal more tattoos creeping up his neck. "You're the one who told Lucia about your sister." It wasn't a question. Amber nodded, her voice suddenly unreliable. "What's her name?" "Sophia. She's 19. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia." Something flickered in his eyes. Pain maybe, or recognition. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face as if memorizing it. "My mother died of cancer when I was 12. Pancreatic. By the time they found it, there was nothing anyone could do. I watched her waste away for 6 months while my father threw money at the best doctors in Europe. None of it mattered." The confession caught Amber off guard. This was Benito Coxeye, the man whose name made grown criminals nervous. And he was standing in his courtyard, telling a stranger about his dead mother. "I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but they were all she had. "You start Monday. Lucia will handle the paperwork. And Ambra." He paused, his gaze holding hers. "When you need time for your sister's appointments, you take it. No questions asked. Family comes first. Always." Then he turned and walked back toward the villa, leaving Ambra standing in the courtyard with tears streaming down her face and the crushing weight of unexpected kindness making her chest tight. That was the moment. The moment she stopped seeing Benito Coxeye as just another criminal and started seeing him as a man who understood what it meant to lose someone you loved. A man who, despite the violence and the blood money and the empire built on fear, still remembered what it felt like to be powerless. That was the moment everything changed. Present day. The vestry. Ambra blinked, bringing herself back to the cold stone room, and the man watching her with unreadable eyes. "You saw me when I was invisible to everyone else. You gave me hope when I had none left. I can't let someone take that away from you, even if you hate me now. So yes, I'm risking my life. Because 6 months ago, you risked your reputation to show kindness to a desperate stranger. This is me returning the favor." Benito's expression remained stone, but something shifted in his eyes. Something that might have been respect, or regret, or both. "Then play the recording, Ambra. Let me hear what's worth dying for." Ambra didn't understand Benito's warning until Elena Volkov arrived 3 months later. The Slavic beauty swept into the villa like winter itself, all platinum blonde hair and porcelain skin, wrapped in designer clothes that cost more than Ambra made in a year. She was breathtaking, sophisticated, exactly the kind of woman who belonged on Benito Coxeye's arm at charity galas and political dinners. The engagement announcement came within a week. A union between the Coxeye and Volkov families, they said. A merger of empires. Strategic. Powerful. Inevitable. Ambra told herself the hollow feeling in her chest was nothing. That one conversation in the sun-drenched courtyard meant nothing. That the way Benito's eyes had found hers across crowded rooms over the past months was coincidence. She was staff. He was engaged to a woman who wore jewelry worth more than small countries. She focused on her work, kept her head down, sent Sophia her tuition payments, tried not to notice how Elena looked at Benito like he was a trophy to be displayed, not a man to be loved. But Elena noticed her. It started with small cruelties. A spilled drink that Elena claimed was Amber's fault. Missing items from Elena's room that somehow appeared in the staff quarters. Complaints to Gabriella about Amber's work, her appearance, her attitude. Each accusation carefully crafted. Each lie delivered with such conviction that even Amber began to doubt herself. Elena saw something. Some invisible thread that connected Amber to Benito. Some possibility that threatened her perfect plans. And Elena Volkov did not tolerate threats. 2 days before the wedding, Amber was cleaning the guest wing. The Volkov family had taken over the entire East Corridor. Security everywhere. expensive luggage in every room. The air thick with perfume and privilege. She was polishing the mirror in the sitting room when she heard Elena's voice through the wall. The bride-to-be was in the adjacent study, speaking in rapid Russian, her usually smooth voice sharp with something that sounded like triumph. Amber should have left, should have finished her work and moved to the next room. But something in Elena's tone made her pause, made her press closer to the wall, straining to hear. Then Elena switched to English, her accent thick but clear. Yes, Dmitri. The wine ceremony. It's perfect. So traditional, so romantic. Everyone will be watching when we drink together as husband and wife. A pause. Amber's heart hammered. She pulled her phone from her apron pocket, hands shaking as she opened the voice recorder. Hit record. Only his glass, obviously. Mine will be clean. The toxin is colorless, tasteless, slow acting. He'll make it through the ceremony, maybe even the first dance. But by the reception's end, he'll feel ill. By morning, he'll be dead. Amber's breath caught. She pressed the phone harder against the wall, praying it was picking up every word. The doctors will call it a heart attack. Tragic. So young. And I'll be the grieving widow with controlling interest in both empires. The Coxide territories, the Volkov network, all mine. No prenup can save him when he's in the ground. Laughter. Cold and crystalline, like breaking glass. Benito Coxide thinks he's marrying an alliance. Instead, he's signing his death warrant. And the best part, everyone will pity me. The beautiful widow. So devastated. So alone. So very, very wealthy. Footsteps. Elena was moving, probably pacing as she talked. Amber needed to leave. Now. Before she was caught. Before Elena realized someone had heard. She stopped the recording and backed away from the wall, her whole body trembling. The phone felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds in her pocket. This wasn't just office gossip or family drama. This was murder. Premeditated, calculated, cold-blooded murder. And she had proof. She made it 3 steps toward the door before it opened. Elena stood framed in the doorway, phone still in her hand, those ice-blue eyes taking in every detail. The cleaning supplies. The mirror. Amber's pale face and shaking hands. For one long, terrible moment, they stared at each other. Then Elena smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. Ambra, how long have you been here? Just arrived, Signora. I was cleaning the mirror. The lie tasted like ash. Elena's smile widened, showing perfect white teeth. Of course. How thorough of you. Tell me, do you always work so quietly? Like a little mouse. There was a threat beneath the words. A promise. Elena knew. Maybe not everything, but enough. Enough to be dangerous. Amber grabbed her supplies and fled. Her heart didn't stop racing until she reached the safety of the staff quarters. Door locked, phone clutched in her trembling hands. She played the recording back. Elena's voice came through clear as crystal, every poisonous word preserved. She had to tell someone, had to warn Benito, had to stop this wedding before it became a funeral. But who would believe a waitress over a Volkov bride? And how long did she have before Elena made sure she could never tell anyone anything ever again? Amber spent that night in her small room, back pressed against the locked door, phone charging on the nightstand beside her. She'd listened to the recording 17 times. Each playback made her hands shake harder. Each word in Elena's cold voice carved deeper into her memory. She had to go to Benito, had to warn him. But how? She couldn't just knock on his door. Couldn't request a meeting with the boss. The hierarchy of the villa was absolute. A waitress didn't speak to Benito Coxeye unless summoned. And even if she found a way, would he believe her? Elena was his fiancée. A Volkov. Amber was nobody. A girl from the wrong side of the city with a dead mother and a recorded conversation that could have been faked, edited, taken out of context. She'd fallen asleep near dawn. Phone clutched in her hand like a lifeline, dreaming of poison and platinum hair and ice-blue eyes that promised death. The pounding on her door woke her 2 hours later. Gabriella stood in the hallway, flanked by 2 security guards. The head of staff's face was stone, but something like pity flickered in her eyes. Get dressed. You're wanted in Signore Coxeye's office. Now. Relief flooded through Ambra. Benito wanted to see her. Maybe he'd sensed something was wrong. Maybe she'd get her chance to warn him after all. She threw on her uniform, grabbed her phone, and followed Gabriella through the villa's corridors. But when they reached Benito's office, Elena was already there. The bride-to-be stood near the window, morning light turning her hair to spun gold. She wore a cream silk blouse and pearls, looking every inch the wronged aristocrat. Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. A tissue was clutched in one delicate hand. Benito sat behind his desk, face unreadable. Those dark eyes that had looked at Ambra with such intensity in the library now regarded her with something cold, professional, distant. On the desk between them sat a ruby brooch. It was exquisite, antique, probably worth more than Ambra would earn in 10 years. Blood-red stones set in yellow gold, glinting in the sunlight. "Do you recognize this, Ambra?" Benito's voice was carefully neutral. Ambra's stomach dropped. "No, signore." Elena made a sound like a wounded animal. Fresh tears spilled down her perfect cheeks. "It was my grandmother's. The only thing I have left of her. She wore it on her wedding day. I was going to wear it on mine." Elena's accent thickened with emotion. She turned to Benito, placing a trembling hand on his shoulder. "I discovered it missing this morning. I thought perhaps I'd misplaced it, but then security found it in her locker. In her things. The lie was perfect. Delivered with just enough pain, just enough shock." Ambra felt the walls closing in. "I didn't take it. I've never seen it before. I would never steal anything. Then how did it end up in your locker?" Benito's question was quiet, final. Ambra looked at him, saw the way his jaw was set, the way his hands were flat on the desk. He'd already decided. Elena had gotten to him first, planted the evidence, spun her story. And now Ambra was the thief. The ungrateful girl who'd repaid the Coxeye family's generosity with betrayal. "Someone put it there. Someone who wants me gone." She looked directly at Elena as she said it. The other woman's eyes flickered with something dark. Triumph. Warning. Why would anyone do that? "You're nobody. Just a waitress." Elena's voice had gone cold. The tears had stopped. For just a moment, the mask slipped, and Ambra saw the ice queen beneath. The woman who planned murders over the phone, who eliminated threats with surgical precision. "Benito, please. There's something I need to tell you. Something about the wedding. About Elena." Ambra pulled out her phone. Elena moved fast, crossing the room to place herself between Ambra and Benito. This is how she operates. Make wild accusations to distract from her crimes. First she steals from me, now she tries to poison you against me. Enough. Benito stood. The word cut through the room like a blade. He looked at Ambra, and for just a moment she thought she saw something. Regret. Doubt. But then it was gone, buried under duty and family honor and the weight of an empire. "You're fired. Pack your things. Security will escort you off the property within the hour." The words hit like bullets. Ambra looked at him. This man she thought she knew. This man she'd been trying to save. "If you drink the wine at your wedding, you'll die. She's going to poison you. I have proof." Elena laughed. It was the same cold sound from the recording. Benito's face hardened. "Get her out of here. And Ambra, if you ever come back, if you ever contact anyone in this family, you won't just lose a job. Do you understand?" The guards took her arms. Ambra didn't fight. She met Benito's eyes one last time, trying to make him see the truth. But he'd already turned away, turned to Elena, who was crying prettily into his shoulder about violated trust and broken hearts. The guards marched Ambra through the villa's corridors like a prisoner. Staff members pressed themselves against walls as they passed, eyes averted. News traveled fast in the Coxeye household. By noon, everyone would know. The waitress who'd stolen from the bride. The girl who betrayed the family's trust. Ambra's mind raced. She still had the recording. The phone was in her apron pocket, pressed against her hip. Elena knew she'd been near that wall. Knew she might have heard. But did she know about the recording? Did she realize Ambra had actual proof? They reached her room. One guard stationed himself outside while the other followed her in, watching as she pulled her battered suitcase from under the bed. She had so little. A few changes of clothes. Her mother's rosary. A photo of Sophia at her high school graduation, smiling in a cap and gown Ambra had worked double shifts to afford. She packed mechanically, mind churning. The wedding was tomorrow. Tomorrow. Benito would stand at that altar, drink that poisoned wine, and die thinking she was a thief who tried to manipulate him with lies about his bride. Unless she could get to him first. Unless she could make him listen. A knock interrupted her thoughts. The guard stepped aside, and Gabriella entered, her lined face unreadable. "Give us a moment." The guard hesitated, then stepped into the hallway, pulling the door partially closed. Gabriella moved closer, lowering her voice to barely a whisper. "I've worked for the Coxeye family for 30 years. I've seen a lot of people come and go. I've learned to tell the difference between a liar and someone telling the truth." Hope flared in Amber's chest. "I know you didn't take that brooch, but it doesn't matter what I think. The decision has been made." Gabriella pressed something into Amber's hand. "Cash. Several €100. Take this. Get far from here. And whatever you do, don't come back. That woman is dangerous." Before Amber could respond, Gabriella was gone. The door closed. The guard returned to his post by the window. Amber finished packing in silence. As she zipped the suitcase, another knock came. This time, her heart stopped. Benito stood in the doorway. He looked at the guard. "Wait outside. Close the door." The guard obeyed without question. The door clicked shut. Suddenly, the small room felt impossibly intimate. Benito's presence filled the space, his cologne mixing with the scent of her cheap soap and old furniture. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Those dark eyes searching her face like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. "Did you take it?" His voice was quiet, private, different from the cold authority he'd used in his office. This was the voice from the courtyard, the storm night, the man beneath the boss. "No. I believe you." The words hit like a physical blow. Amber's breath caught. "Then why?" "Because it doesn't matter what I believe. The Volkovs are one of the most powerful families in Eastern Europe. This marriage secures peace, trade routes, territories. Thousands of people depend on this alliance. And Elena is convinced you tried to steal from her." He moved closer, close enough that she could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the tension in his jaw. "I can't protect you from this. I can't choose a waitress over my bride the day before my wedding. Even if I wanted to. She's going to kill you." Amber pulled out her phone, hand shaking. Benito shook his head. "Don't. Whatever you think you have, whatever you think you know, it ends here. Go home. Forget this place. Forget me. Live your life, Ambra. You think I can just walk away and let you die?" Something flickered across his face. Pain, longing, regret. His hand lifted, almost touching her cheek, then dropped. "I think you don't have a choice. Neither of us do." He turned, and left before she could respond. The door closed. The guard returned. And Ambra stood alone in her empty room, phone in hand, watching the man she couldn't save walk away. 20 minutes later, they escorted her through the service entrance. Her suitcase felt like it weighed nothing. Everything that mattered, she was leaving behind. She didn't see Elena watching from a third-floor window. Didn't see the calculating look in those ice-blue eyes as the bride-to-be pulled out her phone. Elena's call was brief. 2 words in Russian, cold as winter. "Find her." Ambra walked through the villa gates with her suitcase and Gabriella's euros, the afternoon sun burning her eyes. She'd taken 3 steps down the cliff road when she noticed a black sedan. It was parked 50 meters away, engine running, tinted windows hiding whoever sat inside. Not villa security. They drove SUVs with Coxeye logos. This was something else. Someone else. Amber's pulse quickened. She kept walking, forcing herself not to run, not to look back. At the bottom of the hill, she caught a bus heading into the city center. Through the rear window, she watched the sedan pull into traffic 3 cars behind. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone. The recording was still there, Elena's voice preserved in digital amber. Evidence that could save Benito's life. If she could just get it to him. If she could make him listen. The wedding was tomorrow at 2 p.m. The Grand Cathedral downtown, where half the city's elite would gather to watch the Coxeye-Volkov union. Security would be impossible, but she had to try. Amber got off at the Central Market, weaving through crowds of afternoon shoppers. She glanced back. 2 men in dark suits had emerged from the sedan, moving through the market like sharks through water. One spoke into his phone, eyes scanning the crowd. She ducked into a clothing shop, heart hammering. Through the window, she watched them pass, then circle back. They were hunting her. Systematically. Professionally. The shop owner, an elderly woman with kind eyes, noticed her distress. Boyfriend trouble? Something like that. Is there a back exit? The woman pointed to a door behind the register. Amber slipped through into an alley, leaving her suitcase behind. Everything she owned abandoned. But the phone stayed in her pocket. The recording was all that mattered now. She emerged onto a side street and flagged down a taxi. The cathedral. Fast. The driver, a middle-aged man with a cigarette tucked behind his ear, raised an eyebrow. Wedding rehearsal? Something like that. They pulled into traffic. Amber watched through the rear window as the black sedan appeared 2 blocks back. How had they found her so fast? Were there more of them? Was Elena watching through cameras, directing her hunters like pieces on a chessboard? The sedan accelerated. So did a motorcycle she hadn't noticed before. 2 vehicles. Multiple men. Elena wasn't taking chances. Listen, I'll pay you double if you can lose the car behind us. The driver's eyes met hers in the rearview mirror. He saw something in her face that made him nod once, sharply, and floor the accelerator. The taxi shot forward, weaving between cars. The driver knew these streets, taking corners so tight that Amber was thrown against the door. They flew through a yellow light. The sedan ran the red, horns blaring. The motorcycle stayed close, rider leaning into turns with mechanical precision. They raced down a narrow street lined with cafes, scattering pedestrians. The driver yanked the wheel left into an alley barely wider than the car. Metal scraped against brick. They burst out onto a main avenue, tires screaming. The cathedral's spires appeared ahead, rising against the afternoon sky. So close, but the motorcycle had caught up, pulling alongside. The rider reached inside his jacket. Get down! The driver shouted. Amber threw herself to the floor as the rear window exploded. Glass rained down. The driver cursed, swerving hard right into a construction zone. Orange cones scattered like bowling pins. The motorcycle tried to follow, hit a barrier, and went down in a shower of sparks. But the sedan was still coming. And now Amber could see the cathedral entrance, blocked by security barriers and police cars. The wedding rehearsal was happening. The plaza was locked down tight. Stop here. Amber shoved all of Gabriella's money at the driver and bolted from the taxi before it fully stopped. She ran toward the cathedral, phone clutched in her hand. Security guards shouted. The sedan screeched to a halt behind her. Car doors slammed. She couldn't go through the front. She'd be stopped, arrested, dragged away before she could warn anyone. But there was another way. A memory surfaced from 6 months ago, from her first week at the villa. Gabriella explaining that Amber would sometimes help with cathedral events. That the staff entrance was through the old monastery next door, connected by tunnels built centuries ago for priests seeking shelter during wars. Amber veered left, away from the main entrance, toward the weathered stone building that most people ignored. Behind her, Elena's men were closing the distance. 30 meters. 20. She hit the monastery's side door at full speed. It was unlocked. Thank God. She plunged into darkness, into cool stone corridors that smelled of incense and age. Footsteps pounded behind her, male voices shouting in Russian. But Amber knew where she was going. Down the stairs, through the wine cellar, to the tunnel that would take her under the street, under the security perimeter, straight into the cathedral's heart. She ran into the dark, phone glowing faintly in her hand, racing against time to save a man who told her to forget him. The tunnel was older than memory. Stone walls worn smooth by centuries of hands, air thick with the smell of earth and forgotten wine. Amber's phone light cut a weak path through the darkness as she ran, one hand trailing along the wall for balance. Behind her, flashlight beams danced across the walls. The men were in the tunnel. Close. Their voices echoed off stone, Russian consonants harsh and unforgiving. But Amber had the advantage. She'd walked these tunnels before, carrying cases of communion wine for cathedral events. She knew the fork ahead, where the passage split 3 ways. Knew which path led to the cathedral, which to the old catacombs, which dead-ended at a collapsed section that hadn't been cleared in 50 years. At the junction, she took the middle path and kept running. The men's footsteps hesitated, arguing in the dark. Then they split up, their lights separating. One took the left tunnel. One went right. The third chose her path. Amber killed her phone light and pressed herself into an alcove carved into the wall. The man's footsteps grew louder. His flashlight beam swept past her hiding spot once, twice. He was breathing hard, muttering into a radio. He walked past. Amber counted to 10, then slipped out and continued deeper into the tunnel. The passage began to slope upward. She was close. Just another 100 meters, and she'd emerge in the cathedral's sacristy, the small room where priests prepared for Mass. The tunnel ended at a wooden door, iron-banded and ancient. Amber pushed. It stuck, swollen with age and damp. She pushed harder, shoulder against wood. The door groaned open. She emerged into the sacristy, blinking in the sudden light. Vestments hung on hooks. Candles flickered on a small altar. And through the half-open door to the cathedral proper, she could hear voices. The rehearsal! Amber crept to the door and peered through the gap. The cathedral stretched before her in all its Gothic glory. Vaulted ceilings soaring into shadow. Stained glass windows catching the afternoon light. And at the altar, surrounded by security and staff, stood Benito. He wore a dark suit, hands in his pockets, listening as a priest walked through tomorrow's ceremony. Elena stood beside him in a white rehearsal dress, playing the part of the radiant bride. Her hand rested on Benito's arm, possessive, claiming. Amber counted at least 20 security guards scattered throughout the cathedral. More outside, visible through the main doors. Men with earpieces and cold eyes, watching every entrance, every shadow. The Coxeye family took no chances. She couldn't just walk out there. Couldn't interrupt the rehearsal in front of all these people, all the security. They'd grab her before she took 3 steps. Drag her out as a crazy woman, a stalker, the thief who tried to ruin the wedding. And Elena would make sure she disappeared for good. The priest's voice carried through the space. And here, after the exchange of vows, you'll drink together from the ceremonial wine. A tradition symbolizing your shared life, your shared future. A server appeared, carrying a tray with 2 crystal glasses filled with wine. Red as blood in the candlelight. Elena smiled, taking 1 glass. Benito took the other. Amber's heart hammered. This was it. The moment Elena would use to kill him. Only 1 glass would be poisoned. Only Benito's. And tomorrow, when it happened for real, he'd drink without suspicion, surrounded by witnesses who'd seen nothing but a romantic tradition. Actually, let's skip the wine for now. Save it for the real ceremony tomorrow. Benito set his glass down. Elena's smile faltered for just a fraction of a second. Then she laughed, light and musical. Of course, darling. Everything perfect for tomorrow. The rehearsal continued. The priest walked them through the procession, the readings, the blessing. Amber watched, mind racing. She couldn't get to Benito now. But tomorrow, during the actual ceremony, there'd be a moment. Had to be. When he was away from Elena's watchful eyes. When she could show him the recording, make him understand. The vestry. The small room beside the altar where the groom would wait before the ceremony. She'd serve champagne there during other weddings. It was private, quiet. If she could just get to him there, before the ceremony began, she'd have her chance. But that meant staying hidden in the cathedral overnight. Meant risking discovery by security sweeps, by Elena's men who might still be searching the tunnels. Meant surviving the next 18 hours on nothing but desperation and faith. The rehearsal ended. The wedding party began to file out. Elena on Benito's arm, already playing the wife. Security swept the cathedral 1 final time. Amber pressed deeper into the sacristy shadows, barely breathing as a guard poked his head in, scanned the room, and moved on. The main doors closed. Locks clicked into place. The cathedral fell silent except for the whisper of candles and the distant hum of a city beyond the stone walls. Amber was alone, locked in, hiding in the house of God with evidence that could save or damn them all. She found a confessional booth in a side chapel, slipped inside, and pulled the curtain closed. The wooden seat was hard, the space cramped, but it was hidden, safe. She would wait here until the ceremony began the following afternoon. Until her moment came. She pulled out her phone, checking the recording 1 more time. Elena's voice filled the tiny space, cold and clear. By morning, he'll be dead. Not if Amber could help it. She silenced the phone, closed her eyes, and settled in to wait for dawn. Tomorrow, she'd crash a wedding. Tomorrow, She'd drag a mafia boss away from his own bride. Tomorrow, the truth would come out, no matter the cost. The vestry door slammed shut behind them. Benito leaned against it, arms crossed, his wedding suit perfectly tailored, his face a mask of controlled fury. Outside, 500 people waited in stunned silence. Inside, Amber's heart hammered so hard she thought it might crack her ribs. She'd done it. She'd crashed his wedding, dragged him from the altar, humiliated him in front of the most powerful criminals in Europe. There was no going back from this. Whatever happened in the next 60 seconds would determine whether she'd saved his life or thrown away her own for nothing. You have 1 minute, Amber Costa. Make it count. His voice was ice, but beneath the anger, she heard something else. Curiosity, the smallest thread of hope that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't crazy. Amber held up her phone with shaking hands. Just listen. Please. She hit play. Elena's voice filled the small room, crystal clear, every word damning. Yes, Dimitri. The wine ceremony. It's perfect. So traditional, so romantic. Everyone will be watching when we drink together as husband and wife. Only his glass, obviously. Mine will be clean. The toxin is colorless, tasteless, slow-acting. He'll make it through the ceremony, maybe even the first dance. But by the reception's end, he'll feel ill. By morning, he'll be dead. Benito's face went white. Not shock. Recognition. He was a man who lived in the shadows, who understood betrayal like others understood breathing. This wasn't surprising. This was confirmation of something he'd already suspected. The recording continued. The doctors will call it a heart attack. Tragic. So young. And I'll be the grieving widow with controlling interest in both empires. The Coxeye territories, the Volkov network, all mine. No prenup can save him when he's in the ground. Benito Coxeye thinks he's marrying an alliance. Instead, he's signing his death warrant. And the best part, everyone will pity me. The beautiful widow. So devastated. So alone. So very, very wealthy. Silence. The recording ended. Amber lowered the phone, watching Benito's face. Watching the man she'd risked everything for process the fact that his bride planned to murder him on their wedding day. When? His voice was quiet. Deadly. 2 days ago. I was cleaning the guest wing. I heard her on the phone. I recorded it. I tried to tell you, but Elena planted the brooch in my locker. Made you think I was a thief, so you'd fire me before I could warn you. Benito's jaw tightened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. She framed you. Yes. And I believed her. The words hung between them. An apology. An admission. A man who ruled an empire, humbled by a waitress who'd seen the truth he'd missed. Then the door burst open. Elena stood framed in the doorway, still in her wedding gown, but the radiant bride mask had cracked. Her blue eyes blazed with cold fury. Behind her, security guards hesitated, uncertain whether to intervene. Benito, darling, what is this insane woman telling you? She's clearly unstable. She stole from me. Now she's making up wild stories. Elena's voice was smooth, concerned, but her eyes kept flicking to the phone in Amber's hand. Calculating. Assessing the damage. Benito looked at his bride. The woman he'd been about to marry. The woman who'd planned to poison him in front of 500 witnesses. Is it true? His voice was soft. Dangerous. The tone of a man who'd killed before and would kill again. Of course not. She's lying. She's obsessed with you. Anyone can see it. She wants to destroy our wedding, our future. Elena moved closer, reaching for Benito's hand. He stepped back. I have the recording. Your voice. Planning my murder with Dimitri. Want to hear it? For one heartbeat. Elena's mask shattered. The Ice Queen emerged, all pretense gone. Her face went cold, calculating, the face of a woman who'd orchestrated assassinations and takeovers without losing sleep. You were never supposed to be smart enough to figure it out. You were supposed to drink the wine, die like a good boy, and leave me everything. The words fell like stones. Confession. Admission. The truth lay bare. Elena's hand moved toward her bouquet. Amber saw the glint of metal. Not flowers. A gun, small and deadly, hidden among the white roses. Down. Amber threw herself at Benito as Elena's hand cleared the bouquet. Security rushed forward. The gun clattered to the floor. Men in suits pinned Elena against the wall, her wedding dress crumpling, her perfect hair falling loose. She didn't scream, didn't fight, just looked at Benito with those ice-blue eyes and smiled. You chose a waitress over an empire. How disappointing. Benito looked down at Ambra, still on the floor where she tackled him. This woman in her stained uniform who'd lost everything to save him, who'd been right all along. Benito extended his hand to help Ambra up from the vestry floor. His touch was warm, solid, real. Outside, the cathedral had erupted into chaos. Voices shouting, security mobilizing, the Volkov family demanding answers. The wedding of the century had become the scandal of the decade. Elena was led away in handcuffs, still in her wedding dress, still smiling that cold smile. The gun, the recording, the confession. It was enough. More than enough. The Volkov family would disavow her to save face. She'd spend the rest of her life in a cell or disappear into whatever dark corner people like her disappeared into. Benito had looked at Ambra, really looked at her, and said 4 words. Thank you. I'm sorry. Then Lucia had appeared, pulling him away to deal with the diplomatic nightmare unfolding in the cathedral. Ambra had slipped out through the same tunnel she'd entered, invisible again, just another shadow. That had been 3 weeks ago. Now, Ambra sat at a small table outside Cafe Marino, a seaside place 20 kilometers from the city, where tourists came for the sunset and locals came for the coffee. She found work here within days. The owner, a widow named Rosa, had asked no questions about the waitress who'd appeared with nothing but the clothes on her back and a phone full of news alerts about a cancelled mafia wedding. The pay was less than the Coxeye Villa. The tips were smaller, but Ambra could breathe here, could sleep without dreaming of poison and ice-blue eyes, could send Sophia her tuition and build something that belonged to her. She told herself she didn't think about Benito, told herself the hollow ache in her chest was just exhaustion, just the aftershock of everything that had happened. Told herself she'd done what needed to be done, and that was enough. The sun was setting over the Mediterranean when the black car pulled up. Ambra's heart stopped. She knew that car, knew the man who stepped out, wearing jeans and a simple white shirt instead of his usual suits. No security, no entourage, just Benito Coxeye alone, walking toward her table like he had every right to be there. He stopped a few feet away. Those dark eyes found hers. You're a hard woman to find. I wasn't hiding. No, you were just living your life. Like I told you to. He pulled out the chair across from her, sat down without asking permission. Rosa appeared with coffee, gave Benito a long, assessing look, and retreated without a word. They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun paint the water gold and orange. Finally, Benito spoke. The Volkov alliance is finished. Elena's been extradited to Moscow. Her family cut all ties to save their reputation. The wedding, the merger, all of it. Gone. I'm sorry. Don't be. You saved my life. You lost your job, your safety, everything, because you refused to let me die. I've been trying to figure out how to thank you for 3 weeks. He reached across the table, not touching her hand, just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him. You don't owe me anything. I did what anyone would do. No, you did what no one else would do. You risked everything when you had nothing. You saw the truth when I was blind. You're the bravest person I've ever met, Amber Costa. He stood, pulling back his sleeve. On his left wrist, just above where the rose tattoo ended, was fresh ink. Small, delicate, perfect. An olive branch. For peace. For new beginnings. For you. Amber's breath caught. The tattoo was beautiful, permanent, a promise etched in skin. Benito, I'm just a waitress. I'm a man who almost married a woman who wanted me dead. A man who fired the one person who told him the truth. A man who spent 3 weeks settling old debts and making new choices so he could come here and ask you one question. He took her hand. Finally, his fingers lacing with hers like they'd always belonged there. Amber Costa, would you have dinner with me? Not as a boss and an employee, not as a mafia don and a witness, just as 2 people who've been through hell together and came out alive. The sun touched the horizon. The Mediterranean glowed like liquid fire, and Ambra, who'd lost everything and gained something infinitely more valuable, smiled. Yes, I'd like that. Benito smiled back. Not the controlled mask he wore for the world. A real smile. The one she'd first glimpsed in a storm-dark library months ago. Rosa brought them 2 more coffees without being asked. She winked at Amber as she set them down. Outside, the sunset painted everything gold. Inside, 2 people who'd survived poison and betrayal and impossible odds sat together and talked about what comes next. And for the first time in months, Amber felt something she'd almost forgotten. Hope. Thank you for staying with me until the very end of this incredible journey. If this story touched your heart, wait until you see what's coming next. It's even more powerful and inspiring than you can imagine. So don't go anywhere. Click on that video showing on your screen right now to dive into another amazing story that will absolutely blow your mind. Trust me, you won't regret it.